Good afternoon. I hope everyone is well today. I appreciate you all being here at this press conference to really talk about the evolving crisis that we are facing in Arkansas with pharmacy reimbursement and patient access to pharmacist services all around our state. I'm Scott Pace, and I serve as the CEO of the Arkansas Pharmacists Association. I'd like to first begin this press conference by thanking Governor Hutchinson for his press conference last week on this very important issue, where he announced he would be calling a special session of the legislature to address the crisis that's affecting patients and affecting pharmacists throughout the state. Mr. Governor, the pharmacists of the state and their patients appreciate your strong leadership on this issue, and we thank you for your commitment to calling a special session. I also want to thank the countless members of the Arkansas General Assembly who have worked tirelessly on this issue. Many of you have heard Senator Caldwell and Representative Gray's name used repeatedly, but what you need to know is that there are absolutely an unnameable number of legislators that have been working behind the scenes on behalf of patients of the state of Arkansas and on behalf of their pharmacists. This crisis, as you know, involves the health insurance plans operating in the health insurance marketplace. This crisis calls for immediate relief for the pharmacist and comprehensive oversight of the pharmacy benefit manager middlemen that stand between you, the patient, and your pharmacist. The health insurance marketplace is a vital part of the way that hundreds of thousands of Arkansans access health care insurance in our state. The importance of this program, including Arkansas Works to our state, cannot be overstated. Our hospitals rely on it, our doctors rely on it, our pharmacists, and most importantly, our patients rely on it. But this program needs to work for everyone. But for the marketplace to work, there must be sufficient competition and there must be sufficient transparency. At the first of the year, it became apparent that the transparency that is needed is severely lacking, specifically in the pharmacy benefit space. On January 1st, the health insurers and their pharmacy benefit middlemen dramatically cut the reimbursements to the pharmacists that provide care around the state. These cuts resulted in many patients being turned away at the pharmacy counter, not because the pharmacist didn't want to serve them, but because the insurance reimbursements simply didn't cover the cost of the medications. In many cases, the pharmacists took care of their patients while taking large losses on their medications. Pharmacists take care of people, folks, and that's what they try to do. But the pharmacists were ultimately faced with a challenge of taking large losses or turning their patients away, simply because of the actions of the insurance companies and their pharmacy benefit middlemen. I'm going to give you a specific example. In Stuttgart, a rural rice-producing town on Arkansas's Grand Prairie, an epileptic patient in his 50s who lives 10 miles away in a little town called Humphrey doesn't have a car, doesn't have a caregiver, he can't read or write. His day-to-day caregiver is his community pharmacist in Stuttgart. That gentleman has a seizure disorder, and the only medication that he takes to control his seizure disorder is provided by his local pharmacist. After the first of the year, that pharmacist was faced with the issue of having to lose $25 on that prescription to take care of this gentleman's seizure disorder, or let him face the real possibility of going to the emergency room, or worse yet, end up in the hospital. That is not a choice that any healthcare provider, and that is not a choice that any patient should be faced with. This exact situation has been replayed across the state countless times since the first of the year, with losses mounting with Arkansas Blue Cross, Ambetter, and Qual Choice, and the PBMs that service them. The situation is unsustainable and it requires a fix. We are so thankful that the governor recognizes the need for the fix by asking for a special session. It's an important step. But there are two meaningful components that must be addressed. The first is an immediate fix that allows patients like our aforementioned epileptic patient to be taken care of and for the pharmacist to be able to make a reasonable profit to care for their patients. The insurance carriers and their PBMs must step up and offer a meaningful solution to this healthcare crisis around the state. Up until now, the pharmacists have literally been taxed by losing money to take care of their patients. This must end. Make no mistake, this is not a situation where the pharmacists that you see around you simply want to make more money. This is a situation where the health insurance companies and their pharmacy benefit managers don't even cover the cost of the medications. I implore these insurance companies and the pharmacy benefit managers to do the right thing and bring a meaningful fix to this problem. Secondly, we need to bring meaningful oversight to the pharmacy benefit manager community for all of the patients in Arkansas. And we want this to happen in a special session. When the fox guards the henhouse, all sorts of games can be played. And in Arkansas, with the PBMs, they have been. Many may ask, why do we need additional government oversight? Everyone else in the healthcare equation has oversight. The manufacturer of the medicine, the wholesaler who distributes the product, the pharmacist who dispenses it, the doctor who writes it, even the insurance company who bears the risk, all have oversight. Yet the pharmacy benefit manager who is playing games with Arkansas citizens and the dollars of our health care do not have sufficient oversight. They operate behind a curtain of secrecy. And I want to show you just a few examples of what happens when the fox guards the henhouse. I'm going to start with Christie on the end. APA was able to obtain pricing data that shows how CVSCaremark, the PBM for Blue Cross Blue Shield, pays itself at a far higher rate than it pays the independent pharmacies in Arkansas. In this particular example, the independent pharmacy for the atypical antipsychotic drug Abilify was paid a grand total of $28.27, barely covering the cost of the medication. CVS set that independent pharmacy's price, but when they set their own price, they set it at over $500 for the same prescription. This is, number one, a violation of Arkansas law, but more importantly, it is an unconscionable and unethical act of overpaying one provider themselves while paying a staggeringly smaller amount to other providers. It's almost unbelievable. The next example I want to show you involves a life-saving cancer drug called Timidar. Dr. Aker, if you turn that one around. The independent pharmacy who filled the prescription for Timidar was paid $909 for this very expensive medication. The PBM CVSCaremark paid themselves over $3,900 for the same prescription. This is an example of blatant self-dealing, and this abuse of the healthcare system has got to be stopped. This is artificially driving up the cost of healthcare for the patients of the state of Arkansas. The premiums that you all pay are being driven up by this, and at the end of the day, independent pharmacies are being underpaid. We're scratching around for nickels and dimes, while $100 bills are being thrown around by CVS to themselves. Now, APA also didn't just look at these two drugs. We were able to obtain a market basket of over 270 of the top prescribed and dispensed medications in the state of Arkansas. What the data reveals is that CVS pays itself over $60 per prescription more than it pays Arkansas's independently owned pharmacies. Ladies and gentlemen, that is self-dealing at its finest at the expense of people who live here, who work here, who pay taxes here, and who take care of Arkansas's citizens. It is flat wrong. The fight... The fight over fair payment is crystal clear. CVS is paying independent pharmacies below their cost to devalue their businesses to try to swoop in and buy them on the cheap. Such a practice is anti-competitive and wrong. And it's also not just supposition. Dr. Bethay is going to turn around a letter that CVS has been sending around to independent pharmacies around the state of Arkansas since these dramatic reimbursement cuts have taken place. They are trying to swoop in after cutting the reimbursements down to the bone to put people out of business. And it's time for the insurance commissioner to have the proper oversight to oversee this practice. The legislation that Senator Ron Caldwell and Representative Michelle Gray have proposed is reasonable and it's common sense, and it has been carefully crafted. And I want the pharmacists to hear this. Right now, we think the pendulum has swung all the way this way. It is not our goal to swing the pendulum back the other way. Pharmacists are not about retribution. We are about fairness for our patients and for our business. We just want the pendulum to be in the middle where there is a fair and equal playing field for all of us to play on. And that's what this legislation that Senator Caldwell and Representative Gray have drafted has done. So what I would tell you, my fellow pharmacists, and to the patients around the state, we need this legislation. And what we also need to do is we need to thank our legislators who have stood up for the patients of the state of Arkansas, for the taxpayers of the state of Arkansas, for the pharmacists of the state of Arkansas. And we need to ask them in an absolute, genuine and polite way to support the legislation in the special session. I know you all will join me in doing that and thanking them. And at this time, I'd like to turn the podium over to Senator Caldwell.
Thank you, Scott. I want everybody to know that Senator Rayford, the chairman of our Senate Insurance Committee, Representative Gray, and many others have been working on this legislation to try to get to something that we can all live with is quite a task. We want to pass a bill that accomplishes the goals that we need to accomplish. I've told my colleagues on the other side of the aisle that I don't want to pass a bill that says something and does nothing. We're past that point. We're at a critical mass state in Arkansas. So many of the pharmacists are first-line healthcare providers, those that take blood pressure, take temperatures, that give flu shots for people that may live miles away from a healthcare clinic. So this is something that we need to get crafted. It needs to be common sense and something that everyone can live with. But again, I state we want a bill that not just says something, but actually will do something. This legislation will accomplish several key things. First, it requires pharmacy benefit managers to license in the state of Arkansas and give the insurance commissioner specific rulemaking authority to govern their conduct. That's something we don't have. Right now, I'm a conservative. I run on the Republican Party, and we're always talking about less government oversight. And in this case, it's not that we have less government oversight, we have no government oversight. And so there is a difference. We're not trying to take the pendulum back to the other side, as Scott alluded to, but there needs to be oversight. Our healthcare system is too important, too large, and too large of a part of our economy to allow large companies that intervene in patients' care not to be overseen. It's time for Arkansas to take a leading role in the nation, and we really are taking a leading role in the nation to make this happen. This is a good piece of legislation. I appreciate the governor is willing to call a special session for us, and I look forward to working with him on this and with you. It's the right thing to do for patients, for pharmacists, and for Arkansas. At this time, I want to recognize Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin.
need, and this is in reference to something Senator Caldwell said, what we need is a fair, level playing field. On a fair, level playing field, Arkansas pharmacists can compete. We don't have a fair, level playing field. We don't have a healthy market. We don't have healthy competition. And it is not just in this area. It is writ large in healthcare. If you doubt what I'm saying, look at the Kaiser Foundation, a lot of the other rankings. We have one of the worst ratings in the country for a market in healthcare. So it's not that the market is messed up. So we don't have a market. The type of stuff going on here, that doesn't happen in a market where there's competition and transparency and a lot of these principles that are absolutely critical to have a market properly function. What we have is dysfunction because of oversized players that are basically helping themselves at your expense. But let me talk about the practical consequences of this. I heard about this problem, I guess shortly after the beginning of the year. Had some friends who are pharmacists reach out to me. And then I met with Scott and some others to learn more about this. And then more constituents started reaching out to me. And let me tell you, yes, pharmacists were the first folks that I heard from. But it's not because they're the only folks. It's because they're on the front line. We know in the Army that the frontline troops get it first, but they're not the only troops. So yes, the pharmacists are the first to say, hey, what's going on here? But there are a lot of folks behind those pharmacists who buy prescription drugs, who rely on prescription drugs, me, that are being impacted or will be impacted. The consequence of this, if we do not fix it, it's not just the pharmacists. And that's a big deal. These small business folks around the state, their livelihood, that's a big deal. But much, much broader consequences. What are those? Well, access to health care, particularly in rural areas. In the rural areas, as you indicated, in a lot of these rural areas, your pharmacist is your health care provider. They're the ones that keep you going. You're going to have less access to health care. And price can go up. So you're going to pay more and have less access. That's exactly the wrong way for Arkansas when we already rank poorly in those areas anyway. So this is common sense. But this room, yes, there's a lot of pharmacists in here, a lot of folks that support pharmacists here, but that's not why this room is packed. This room is packed because this is an Arkansas issue. This is every household in Arkansas, and that's why this room is packed, and that's why this is such a big deal, and that's why we've got to pass Representative Gray's bill in the House and Senator Caldwell's bill in the Senate. Thank y'all.
He ought to run for office or something. That was pretty good. I want to finally introduce Representative Michelle Gray. She's been the lead on this issue in the House. Bring up Representative Gray.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I did not intend to talk today, and so much has been happening so fast to try and get this taken care of. And first, I want to thank all of you for coming today and just being so active in helping us get this essentially set in motion and hopefully finalized. Without the advocacy that we've seen here today, for the past few months, we wouldn't be here. So I just wanted to thank you all for being so active politically with us. And also, I wanted to thank Senator Caldwell, Senator Rayford has been wonderful, and Senator Hickey and Senator Wardlaw I'm calling him a senator, Representative Wardlaw, for helping us get this language drafted properly. I do want to talk about, I had a comment in the Democrat Gazette earlier in the week where I said I didn't understand why the governor wouldn't take care of this right now. I still wish this could be taken care of immediately. I still do. But I met with the governor this morning and we sat directly across from each other and we looked, we had complete eye contact, and he assures me that this bill, which we are still working to finalize it to make sure that there are no unintended consequences, both chambers are working together, that this bill, once finalized, will be on the special call. He looked me in the eyes, and I have to trust that. If I can't trust my governor to do what he says he'll do, I might as well just pack up and go home. So with that, I'm saying, although I'd love to have this done right now, I do understand wanting to keep the sanctity of the chambers and the fiscal session in place. And so I'm going to back off with requesting it being done in a fiscal session, and I'm going to trust my governor that he's going to do what's right for the people of Arkansas. Not just for the pharmacists, but also for all of our constituents, our elderly that still need their medications delivered that the big box chains won't do. So with that, I ask you all to please support your representatives as we work through this, and your senators. Help support them to get this into a special session and then to ultimately get it passed for the benefit of Arkansas. So thank you very much.
I want to close with just a couple of comments. I have been remiss to not mention the support of Senator Rayford. Many of you probably know that Senator Rayford is the president of NCOIL, which is the National Council of Insurance Legislators. He has been a champion. And for those of you from Faulkner County and around, I just want to make sure, Senator, that I recognize you and appreciate all of your hard work. And I also want to thank Speaker Gillum and President Pro Tem Dismay. They issued that letter last Friday requesting a special session to the governor. That's not something they had to do. I think they did that because they recognize the severity of what's going on and the need to address it. And so I also want to thank them. But before we close, I'm happy to take any questions. I guess, are y'all willing to take any questions? So if there are any questions. Seeing none. Wow. Yes, ma'am.
When does the fiscal year end?
So we're currently in the fiscal session. So the fiscal session runs for approximately 30 days, and legislators, correct me, make sure I don't think they want to go any longer than that either. I see a lot of heads shaking back there. The fiscal year of the state ends June 30th, but the fiscal session ends in a 30-day period, and we're about halfway through week 2 of that session. So I think what we would expect is a special session to begin upon adjournment of the fiscal session. It would be up to the governor's call, so I don't want to speak for the governor, but probably 3 weeks or so is what I would just generally eyeball it at. Representative Gray.
Thank you. And one thing that I failed to mention is the resolution that's filed right now does not have an emergency clause on it. And so that, I believe, and you forget over time, but usually when we pass, the governor signs a bill into law, it takes 90 days for it to go into effect. So with the bill that we plan to file in the special session, there will be an emergency clause on there that makes it effective almost immediately. So that's to try and expedite
So pharmacists and patients that are here, go shake your legislators' hands. Thank them for their support. Ask them to sign on to the bill in the special session. But these guys and gals, keep in mind, we've got a citizen legislature. They go home to their families and they work jobs and they do the hard work of policy making for the state of Arkansas. So thank them for what they do for the state because it is hard work and oftentimes very thankless work. And so I just want to publicly thank all of you for what you do for the state of Arkansas. So with that, big clap for them. Thank you you all for coming. We got a lot of work to do, so let's go do it.
You got to knock you in the head. I apologize.